In the spring of 1960, the Cold War was at its most volatile. Two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, were locked in a struggle for global dominance. Nuclear weapons, ideological battles, and espionage defined this era. But on May 1, 1960, a single event would ignite a diplomatic crisis, derail peace talks, and expose the hidden world of high-stakes intelligence gathering. This is the story of the U-2 spy plane incident, a turning point in Cold War history. To understand why this event was so explosive, we need to step back to the late 1950s. The United States faced a pressing question. How powerful was the Soviet Union? American leaders feared that Moscow was rapidly expanding its nuclear arsenal and developing long-range missiles capable of striking U.S. cities. Accurate intelligence was critical, but getting it was nearly impossible. Satellites were still experimental, and traditional reconnaissance aircraft couldn't penetrate deep into Soviet territory without being shot down. The solution was a revolutionary aircraft, the U-2. The U-2 was unlike anything the world had seen. Designed by Lockheed's Skunk Works under the legendary Kelly Johnson, it was a sleek, long-winged plane built for altitude. Flying at over 70,000 feet, the U-2 could soar above the reach of most Soviet fighters and anti-aircraft guns. Its cameras could capture razor-sharp images of missile sites, airfields, and military installations from the edge of space. Operated by the CIA, these missions were top secret. For years, they succeeded, giving Washington invaluable insight into Soviet capabilities. But the Soviets were not blind to these intrusions. They knew American planes were violating their airspace, and they were determined to stop them. By 1960, the Soviet Union had deployed a new weapon, the SA-2 guideline surface-to-air missile. This system could reach altitudes that were once thought untouchable. The stage was set for a confrontation. On May 1, 1960, Francis Gary Powers, a skilled pilot and former Air Force officer, prepared for what seemed like a routine mission. His flight would begin in Peshawar, Pakistan, and take him across the heart of the Soviet Union, photographing strategic targets along the way. Powers knew the risks. The Soviets had been improving their air defenses, and whispers suggested they might have missiles capable of reaching the U-2's altitude. Still, the mission proceeded. As Powers crossed into Soviet airspace, radar operators tracked his progress. Near Sverdlovsk, the order was given. Shoot him down. A salvo of SA-2 missiles streaked skyward. One detonated near the U-2, sending shrapnel tearing through the aircraft. The wings ripped away, and the plane spiraled toward the earth. Powers ejected, parachuting into hostile territory. Within hours, he was captured by Soviet forces. Back in Washington, panic set in. Officials scrambled to contain the fallout. The initial response was denial. The U.S. claimed that a weather research plane had gone off course and crashed. But the Soviets had the wreckage, and they had Powers alive. Premier Nikita Khrushchev played his hand masterfully. He waited until the Americans doubled down on their cover story, then revealed the truth. The U-2 was a spy plane, and its pilot was in Soviet custody. The embarrassment was staggering. The timing could not have been worse. President Dwight D. Eisenhower had been preparing for a major summit with Khrushchev in Paris, aimed at easing Cold War tensions. Instead, the summit collapsed. Khrushchev demanded an apology and an end to U-2 flights. Eisenhower admitted the flights had occurred, but refused to apologize. The diplomatic thaw froze overnight. The U-2 incident was more than a political scandal. It exposed the scale of American espionage and hardened Soviet attitudes. Powers was put on trial in Moscow, accused of spying against the Soviet Union. Cameras rolled as he stood in a packed courtroom, facing charges that could have led to his execution. Ultimately, he was sentenced to 10 years in prison, 3 years in confinement, and 7 in labor camps. But Powers' story didn't end there. In 1962, he was exchanged for Rudolf Abel, a Soviet spy captured in the United States in a dramatic swap on Berlin's Glienicke Bridge. Back home, Powers faced criticism. Some argued he should have destroyed the aircraft or taken his own life to protect classified information. But many experts agreed these expectations were unrealistic. Powers had followed protocol as best he could under impossible circumstances. The consequences of the U-2 incident rippled far beyond the courtroom. It marked the end of manned reconnaissance flights over the Soviet Union. The U.S. accelerated its development of spy satellites, ushering in a new era of intelligence gathering that relied on technology rather than human pilots. It also deepened mistrust between East and West, reinforcing the perception that neither side could afford to let its guard down. The U-2 program itself continued, and remarkably, the aircraft remains in service in modified forms even decades later. But the crash of May 1, 1960, stands as one of the most dramatic episodes in Cold War history, a story of ambition, secrecy, and the high-stakes gamble of espionage at 70,000 feet. To truly grasp the significance of this event, we need to look at the broader picture. The Cold War was not just a military standoff. It was a psychological battle. Each side sought to project strength and exploit weakness. Intelligence was the lifeblood of strategy. Without accurate information, leaders were forced to make decisions in the dark, decisions that could lead to catastrophe. The U-2 flights were born from this necessity. They were risky, provocative, and ultimately unsustainable. But for a time, they provided the United States with a window into the Soviet world. The incident also revealed the human dimension of espionage. Francis Gary Powers was not a faceless operative. He was a man caught in the gears of history. His capture and trial became a media spectacle, shaping public perceptions of the Cold War. For Americans, Powers was a reluctant hero, criticized by some, defended by others. For Soviets, he was proof of American aggression. His fate symbolized the perilous balance between secrecy and accountability. In the end, the U-2 affair taught both sides a sobering lesson. Technology could provide an edge, but it could also create vulnerabilities. The pursuit of security often bred insecurity. And in a world divided by ideology, even a single plane could bring nations to the brink. Today, the wreckage of Powers, U-2, remains a relic of a bygone era, a silent witness to the dangers of a world where trust was scarce and the sky was a battlefield. The story of the U-2 is not just about a plane or a pilot. It is about the relentless drive for knowledge in a time of fear, and the price paid when ambition collides with reality. Thanks for watching. If you learned anything, or if I at least entertained you today, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing. The almighty algorithm decides who gets recommended my videos based on the amount of views versus likes and subscriptions. I wish I didn't have to ask, but please do consider pressing like and subscribe.